So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about weather here in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm going to give it all to you, all the seasons and things you should experience and expect, and some tips in dealing with the weather here in Fort Worth, Texas. And stick around to the end where I tell you a story about the craziest storm my wife and I have been stuck in here in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm Tim Parnell, and I'm a local realtor here in Fort Worth, Texas. And my goal is to bring you videos about what it is to live in and around Fort Worth, Texas. So if you would please hit subscribe and the bell at the bottom of the screen, and that way you'll be notified when other videos come out. Remember, I'm Tim Parnell, and you're watching Tim Around Town. When it comes to weather here, amazing. Fort Worth, Texas has some of the most amazing sky views and clouds and sun that just combine to just turn in some of the most beautiful scenes I've seen in my life. And I've been to a lot of different states and countries. And I'm just telling you, there's something about a Texas sky that if you haven't seen it for yourself, come here and check it out. I promise it won't disappoint. Right now, at the time of this video, we are at the beginnings of summer, okay? And what I mean by that is we're starting to get the temperature up there into the mid to high 90s. And that's I mean, we've got some room to grow, okay? When we get into July and August, we'll probably hit triple digits. It's not uncommon to do triple digits for a week at a time. And so I want you to know about things that you should expect if you're going to be here in Fort Worth, Texas during the summertime. And so a couple of things you need to know is it gets hot and sunscreen is going to be your friend. All right. My wife and I, my family, we love to go out to the lake and I'm not always one to put on the sunscreen, but gosh darn it, if you don't do it, you're going to turn into a potato chip and you don't want to do that. Okay. And so that's one thing I recommend, but also you got to find a friend with either a boat, a pool, get a pool for yourself, or go find a city water park, splash park, or some of the cities around here, they have their own city water park that by being a citizen of that city, you can actually go and join that for either a very nominal fee or you can come as a guest from another city and pay a higher fee to do that water park. And it's just a good way to get outdoors and soak up some of that cool water in the middle of a hot, hot day. We also have commercial water parks that you should take advantage of. We've got Hurricane Harbor there in Arlington, Texas. We've also got NRH2O in North Richland Hills and Jellystone Park, which is south of downtown Fort Worth, really south of Burleson, Texas. But we've got more than that. I mean, that's just to name a few. Things to think about when it comes to the hot temperatures here. You definitely want a car, ideally, that has working air conditioning. That may not be a thing. If you're coming from a northern state, a cool state, you may not care whether your car has AC, but here, I promise you, you will. The other thing to think about is having window tint, okay? Not something that I really understood until I got my car tinted, and I realized just how much sun was blocked from coming into my car, and that was cooler. It's still hot, but it's a lot cooler getting into my car, and I could grab the steering without burning my hands or sit in the seat without burning my butt. But a lot of people I've met will come from a cooler state and they don't really think twice about having tinted windows. And so they'll come here and they've got the sun shining right into their car and they find out pretty darn quick that tinted windows is a great idea to keep that sun from bearing down and just really overheating the car. Another thing to think about when it comes to home ownership here in Fort Worth, Texas is, well, your electrical bill. And I'm going to tell you right now, having lived here for almost 2 decades, the AC bill is considerably higher. I mean, your air conditioner bill is going to be the highest in June, July, August, September than any other time of the year, but it's the highest that your electrical bill is probably going to be all year long. So to give you an idea, my first house, my wife and I's first house that we lived in, it was a small house. It was an older home. They're not as notably insulated as a newer build would be today. Our high bill in the summertime would be about $150. It was a small house. We're talking 1,200 square foot. It was just the two of us. It's all we needed. Now, fast forward to today. We live in a house now that's about 3 times that size. And it's also an older home, and so it's not very efficient. It has 2 air conditioning units. In the summertime, those units, to keep this house cool, will run almost nonstop, and our bill will be upwards of $400 a month. But we average that out over the year, even though we pay more in the summertime, June, July, August, September, but you average it out of the year, really, we're paying about an average of $200 a month for our air conditioning. But if you have a new home, just the build standards and the codes to keep that house insulated properly, keep that energy efficiency there is definitely something that you should think about if you don't want that kind of electricity bill. You could heat and cool the same size house here in Fort Worth, Texas for a fraction of the cost if it's a new build home. I want to talk to you about hurricane season. Now, we are in North Texas, and so no, we don't actually get a hurricane here, but we do get the residual effects of the hurricanes that happen on the Gulf Coast down there. And so the way that works is as a hurricane rolls in on the Gulf, we'll get the fingers from that hurricane that kind of roll over us, and we'll drop significant amount of rain in our area. Hurricane season for us runs between June and November. As far as fall goes here in the Fort Worth area, what you're going to experience, and this is really often year to year, sometimes we can go through a fall season, and fall is between September, October, November. And we'll experience a fall where we'll almost have an extended summer. It'll just be hot, 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 hot. It'll get a little cooler, but it's still pretty warm. It's kind of warm at night, hot in the days, and then boom, all of a sudden you wake up one morning to a cold snap. The trees go from green to dead, and leaves are on the ground. You're just going, what happened? And then all of a sudden you're right into wintertime. Like that has happened. But other times we definitely have a graduated fall where we'll actually get, as those days get shorter and the weather gets a little cooler, we get cooler nights, the trees will change, the colors will change, and you'll get to enjoy just the beautiful scenery and the change of those trees as fall rolls in and bridges its gap to wintertime. And so it's a great time for us here to get outdoors and go camping, because in the summertime to go camping outside, it is just too stinking hot at night to take the tent out. Now you can get a cabin locally that has air conditioning, get your camper with air conditioning, but in the fall, you can actually enjoy a cool night of camping. So you can set up that tent and have a good time outdoors, have the campfire, and really enjoy it. Now, my tip to you on that is be sure that you book those camping excursions in advance, several months ideally, because people around here know the very same thing, and so they're going to book all those places you might want to go, so do that ahead of time. So when it comes to holidays in the fall, something you need to think about is if you're from a colder state and you're prepared to go trick-or-treating at Halloween, say, bundled up, here, that's not a thing. It might be so cool, it might be nice enough that we can go out in a shorts and t-shirt as parents and let the kids kind of do their thing, but we don't want to overheat the kids. So we got to make sure that the costumes reflect the weather, which is generally really nice weather when we go to do that at that time of year. Another thing to think about is Thanksgiving. All right, I personally had Thanksgivings here where I had to bundle up, put on the overcoat and scarf. Other times I've shown up in slacks and a polo because it's just warm enough that you don't have to bundle up. And so just another thing to think about. And also that's about the time of year for a recommendation. Another tip is we'll put up lights. My family, we'll do lights for Christmas sometime around Thanksgiving because the weather's nice enough. It's not brutally cold, and we can get out there and get it done, and the days are nice, and so we can get it all knocked out before the winter rolls in. So now we're into the winter months. We're talking about December, January, February. That's going to be the coldest time of year for us here in the Fort Worth area. And things you need to think about when it comes to winter here, it does get cold, but it's not brutally cold, although we do have some bone-chilling windy days, so you definitely want to have the overcoat or the wool coat to kind of break that up and stay warm. But I've been in a winter 48 hours here where I've had my overcoat on, I've had layers on, and even a raincoat on top of that, only for a day or two later to be down to shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops because it just warmed up so quickly. So that's something you can think about, is it's not just brutally cold through the entire winter. It is something that's very manageable. For those from northern states, you would basically think that our winters are laughable when it comes to coldness. Something else that you need to know about the winters here in Fort Worth is that, well, we don't get a lot of snow. And although I have seen snow, and we've had enough snow at least one time that we built about a 1-foot snowman, it's just not something we get. So one thing you can expect here is it can get cold enough and it will freeze enough to turn the moisture that we have in the air into ice on the ground and on the road especially. It's one of the reasons why we'll cancel schools in the area for safety reasons, for driving conditions. So you won't see snow, but because of that ice that you can't really see, that can cause a major hazard issue, and we will keep kids from going to school, we'll keep them home just to keep everybody safe. Work will even cancel, things like that. Bridges and overpasses will definitely, with the right conditions of wet and freezing weather, turn to ice, and they can get crazy. All right, so my favorite time of year really is the spring. Okay, spring is going to run from March, April, May, kind of into June, but it's also the tornado season, which I'm going to get into here at the end. But what I love about spring is it's a dynamic weather season, and so you've got storms, you got rain, you've got you know beautiful sunshine days. You got cool nights, you got warm days, and even cool days. So, I mean, it's just everything is happening. The trees are starting to bloom again, the flowers are blooming, but it's also allergy season. So, if that's something that you can be afflicted with, you definitely want to prepare for that part of the season because it can get pretty nutty for you. I definitely have friends and family that get very miserable. Occasionally, I'll get the little bit of scratchy throat and, stuffy nose and maybe some itchy eyes, but for the most part, I'm very lucky that it doesn't affect me, but goodness, I know it affects a lot of people, especially if you're new here and you haven't developed more of an immunity to it. This is the time of year that you definitely want to go camping if that's something you want to do. And again, like the fall, you want to be booking those camping excursions well in advance because everybody else is going to be doing it too. Because the nights are cool enough that you can camp out in your tent. The water here is still a little chilly to be getting in the swimming pools or even the lakes, at least for locals. But we will, get out on the lakes, but we won't really get into the water at this time until later on in the spring. Spring is also a time of year where you don't really have to use the heater, but you really don't have to use the AC. So a lot of times what we'll do is just turn on the fans and open up the windows. And that's something else you might notice about Texas homes is we have a lot of fans, not a lot of fireplaces. They just not as useful as they are up north. But we do have a lot of ceiling fans just because they can get that air circulating so we can really take advantage of that beautiful weather that's outside. Some tips on what it is to live in the springtime of Fort Worth, Texas is the storm season. I mean, that's the season we're in right now. That is the storm season. And so I love it because, man, I mean, what a powerful display that nature gives us when the storms roll in. And I mean, you can see them rolling in from the distance. You see the storm clouds, the thunderhead clouds coming in. You can hear the thunder rolling in. You can see the clouds and some of that lightning showing through. And as it kind of rolls over you, sometimes it's a calm before the storm. Sometimes you think it's going to get crazy and then it doesn't. But here's a tip for you. What you need is a good weather app and a good radar app. Two different things. Okay, the weather app kind of gives you the 3 to 10 day forecast so you can kind of get an idea what's going to happen this weekend if you want to go out. But my radar app tells me where the weather is right now. And it's a phenomenal app. I use my radar, but it tells me where the storm cell is, where the worst part is. And I mean, it's almost 100% accurate. And I know whether it's going to pass just east, west of me, or north or south. And I can even call family ahead and say, hey, just so you know, the worst is coming at you. So just get ready. We do have a lot of tornado sirens and severe weather sirens in our area. And the severe weather can just be super high winds. We'll get winds so high that it's almost like tornado weather, but it's just straight line winds blowing through a neighborhood. And where I live, we have a lot of mature trees, and I've seen some of those storm seasons take those trees down. We'll have 3 or 4 major trees down in the neighborhood, and it takes some power to get those uprooted. I like the rain that comes with the spring, okay? Sometimes we get those spring showers, nice light rain, gets everything a drink of water, gets the plants going. But sometimes we get a almost day after day torrential downpour, or it'll just downpour like it's just dumping water on you for an hour or two, and then boom, we got sunshine. Or another thing you can expect is we'll have days and days and days of rain. And so what we get into then is flash flooding. And you definitely want to look out for flash flooding because we're not really equipped in this area to handle that amount of water that can come down and cause that flash flooding. And so what a lot of people will do who aren't familiar is they'll be driving down the street and they'll see, well, it looks like a puddle's gone across an intersection, and they'll try and drive their car through there and end up getting stuck because their car is submerged underwater. At least it comes over the hood and they can't drive through. It happens all the time. You see it on the news pretty frequently during this time of year. So definitely be aware of that as a tip to be careful if you're going to be out driving in torrential rain that we'll get. Try to avoid it if you can. Hail is something that we got to talk about, okay? This comes with, it's pretty significant sign that tornadoes might very well be imminent and in your area if you're getting hail. So just be aware of that. But hail in and of itself can be a damaging damaging thing. You don't need a tornado to destroy your car. A hail will do a good job, okay? So what we try to do is get our garages cleared out if it's not something you've already done, to pull the cars in and protect them. But what I want to do is I want to kind of address the tornado issue, because there's a lot of people that aren't from here who think that, we're dodging tornadoes left and right during tornado season, and that's just not true. But I will say that it's not uncommon for my family and I and other families in the area to take shelter a good 4 or 5 times during the tornado season in our own home. So I want to give you some ideas and some things to think about if you're looking at moving to the area, so that you can actually be prepared to live during a tornado season here in Fort Worth, Texas. And this is something that, as I talk to people who are not from the area, not from a tornado belt state, this is something that is pretty scary for them. And I'll confirm that a tornado is a scary thing. Although the likelihood of being caught in one or near one is rare, it can happen, and it's happened to me more than once. But I want to give you some tips to be prepared for a tornado should one be close to you, or you hear the tornado sirens go off, or your phone gives you the, hey, you need to take shelter. Here's some things that you should be ready for. In my house, we know exactly where we go. It doesn't matter if those alarms happen in the middle of the night while the kids are sleeping. It doesn't matter if it's in the day. What we'll do is, if we're all home, we'll gather up the kids, we'll go into our master closet. I know that the master closet in this house is the most solid built space in this home. It's got an exterior wall, and the 2 interior walls are built solid, and it just happens to be a very strong point in the home, so that should, God forbid, this home get a direct hit on a tornado, I'm fairly confident that we'll be just fine. But what we also have in our closet is, I have flashlights, I've got water bottles, I've got snacks for the kids, and I've got blankets, and I've also got some toys and games that we can play with, because sometimes you might be there a little longer than expected. But generally speaking, if you have to take shelter in your closet, you're looking at about 20 to 30 minutes tops. One thing that I'll do is I like to have my weather app, I like to have my radar app, but I like to hear what's going on. And it just so happens that our local AM channel of 820, AM 820, when severe weather is happening, they're amazing about jumping on there, and all they do is live weather coverage during that time, so that you can be fully aware of where and what is happening. And that's coming from people live as they kind of dictate that to you through the radio. But I have the app on my phone so I can hear them along with checking what's going on. And of course, you really want a battery backup, an extra battery pack. So if you're using your phone to stay aware of everything, as your phone might die, you can keep it charged. So just another tip. Something else that people will do around here is they'll have a wind-up stereo or wind-up radio with an antenna, so that it doesn't require batteries, but it can be charged, and that way they can hear that radio station given live coverage with maybe out there without using their cell phone. Now I want to tell you about the craziest storm that my wife and I have been caught in that happened here in Fort Worth, Texas. And it's definitely during spring. It happened several years ago. We're talking about 8 or 9 years. But there was a day where the weather was just so crazy. We had multiple tornadoes touch down in the area, and this is our story and our account of that day. We were out driving, and it was kind of a date for us. We were out on a date and just taking it in, and we had gone from, I think, a restaurant, and we were leaving to go somewhere else. I don't remember exactly where, but I just remember that we noticed that the weather was moving in. And when you live here, you know that when the clouds are dark, the day is nice and bright over here, and you got these dark clouds, just ominous looking clouds rolling in, you should probably get ready for something a little crazy. And we saw that happening, except normally you got a little time, you can get home. In this case, it happened fast, and these clouds rolled in right over the top of us, and it went from bright and shiny outside to hardly any clouds to thunder clouds and lightning and hail just immediately happened. And so we're driving in the car. You don't want to be driving in a hailstorm if you can help it. And what happens is, a lot of people, if they're on the highway, they'll stop. And if it gets so rainy and so heavy, they'll just slow down to almost a crawl, and that in of itself is dangerous. And then you'll have people that'll hide out under the underpasses trying to protect their cars, but some will do it right in the middle of the road. It's just crazy. So we were kind of trying to dodge all that, and we knew we just needed to get out of the area. So we knew that behind us was where the storm was coming from, and if we kept driving the other direction, opposite direction, we had a good chance of getting away from the storm. So that's what we did. We're actually headed west, away from downtown Fort Worth and away from the Fort Worth area, leaving the storm behind us. But as we look off to the left, we could actually see what maybe a few miles away was a tornado touching down. And we're going, oh my gosh, look, there's a tornado just touching down right there. We didn't know where to go, and as we could tell, the storm started kind of encircling and coming around where we had planned to drive to get away from the storm. So I had my wife call her dad, because again, we didn't have the cell phone technology, or at least the cell phones we had at the time couldn't really give us good information to tell us where we needed to go to get away from it. So we called her dad, who was in Virginia, and we said, hey, look, we're stuck in the storm. This is where we are. Can you look at any weather reports in our area, pull them up on the internet to maybe help us get out of here? And so he started doing that and talking my wife through it, and she's talking me through it while I'm driving. And I say, look, there's another tornado over there. And so we'd gone a little bit further up the road, and sure enough, off to the left, which is kind of where the storm was now, is another tornado. And so we kept driving around, and we were end up on 820, which is just one of our big beltways out here. And so we're on 820 heading out towards the Weatherford area. And as we got on I-30, which takes you west, we end up seeing a third tornado. And from what I understand that day, there was at least 5 touchdown tornadoes, and we saw 3 of them. And it was all in the area that we were living in, but we had driven so far outside the city. We were about an hour outside the city before we finally pulled our car over and just stopped at a rest area on a highway to turn around and watch the storm roll through. And once it was all over, we got back in our car. We headed home just thinking, oh my gosh, like we could have been right in the middle of that, depending on the timing. But for us, we witnessed 3 in one evening, in one setting. And I've definitely seen more than that in my life, but never 3 in a day. Just want to say thanks so much for sticking around to the end of the video. And remember, if there's anything in the world that I could do for you, be sure to reach me, okay? You can text or call me at the number here. Also email me, and I'll get back to you. If you got to send a smoke signal, do that. I'll get back to you. But hey, thank you so much for your time. And remember, subscribe and click the bell so that you'll be notified of the new videos that are coming out.